CBS has officially decided to part ways with Charlie Rose following allegations of sexual harassment that the Washington Post reported on earlier this week. Now, the report indicated that there were 8 women who had worked with Charlie Rose and granted interviews to Washington Post, some on the condition of anonymity, while others did say that they were comfortable revealing what their identity was. Now, 3 of the women came out and said, "This is my first and last name. Here's what I experienced when I was working for Charlie Rose, and we want to go ahead and expose, some of his behavior." But 5 other women are worried about the ramifications of coming forward, so they decided to remain anonymous. Now, just to quickly detail some of the accusations against him, he was accused of making lewd phone calls to these women, walking around naked in their presence, and also groping their breasts and genital areas. Now, this didn't happen at CBS studios. This oftentimes happened in his own home in New York. And what he would do is invite them to come over and work at a desk that he had in his own personal home. And in a lot of those instances, according to these allegations, he would prey on these women or take advantage of them. Now, 5 described Rose putting his hand on their legs, sometimes their upper thigh, in what they perceived as a test to gauge their reactions. 2 said that while they were working for Rose at his residences or while traveling with him on business, he emerged from the shower and walked naked in front of them. 1 said he groped her buttocks at a staff party. So I'm gonna have some more specific allegations in just a minute. But again, CBS decided to part ways. He was also suspended at PBS. It's likely he will, I don't know actually what PBS is planning on doing.
They'll fire. That's my prediction.
That's my prediction, exactly. But they did suspend him immediately.
We've gone over a lot of these over the last couple of weeks because this is a watershed moment. This is when we've hit a tipping point and women have the courage to come forward and say, we're not gonna take it anymore. Some, as we have discussed throughout the weeks, are tougher cases, and and we've had tough conversations about them, and people have criticized on all sides, and that's normal because we do commentary on these really difficult topics. Charlie Rose is not a difficult case. You read the whole long article, and as always, we'll have the link in the description box, and you will see that it was a disaster, and he did it over and over again. And first of all, the shower trick. I didn't know it was a thing that existed.
Yeah.
But anyone doing the shower trick is clearly doing it. I mean, who wants to watch a 70-year-old guy taking a shower when they're their intern or their staffer, etc. Right? No, it's obvious that it's the same MO every time. Oh, I need to work from home. You need to help me at home. You need to rearrange my books, my shelves, etc. And in the beginning, he's fine. And almost all of them describe a combination of fury and flattery. Like if you do something wrong, he's going to get really mad at you, but then he's going to give you some compliments. And in the beginning, it's fine. And they drive around and they go to his house. And then at some point, there'll be drinks or there'll be a dinner or something. And next thing you know, he's taking a shower. And then he'll say from the shower, "Can you come here for a second?" And then he comes out with a robe, but the robe is wide open. I used to hear these stories well after he got caught about Gary Hart, right? And then Harvey Weinstein, and now Charlie Rose. And then it's not just that he keeps showing himself naked to these women; he then grabs them. He's a goner. He's done.
Yeah, look, there are so many things. Look, even I believe the women, especially considering the fact that there were so many of them. These incidents were corroborated by the Washington Post, meaning that they reached out to family members and individuals who knew the victims and spoke to them to make sure that what they were saying was true. Like at the time of this alleged abuse, which was, by the way, between the 1990s and 2011, did this individual confide in you that this happened? And they corroborated the case. But more importantly, Charlie Rose himself has fessed up to it. And I'll get to his statement in just a minute. But look, even if someone wants to make the case that no, this was consensual, anytime someone is working under you, right? If you are an employer, if you are the boss, and in this case, he's the boss, you have power over these people. These women were low-level employees, meaning they were assistants or assistant producers, were hoping to work their way up within the company, right? And so the issue of consent becomes incredibly fuzzy when you're talking about an employer having any type of sexual involvement with someone who's working under him.
And so to be clear, by the way, this was his own company, which is kind of a side gig, not CBS and PBS employees. So he was able to bring them to his side gig.
Yep.
And then there's no HR.
Right.
There's less protections. And then he had his longtime helper. I forget if she was an assistant or something.
Actually, his executive producer, her name is Yvette Vega. And according to the Washington Post report, the accusers went to her on multiple occasions, and she was quoted as saying, "That's just Charlie being Charlie."
Now she says she deeply regrets having done that. But everybody knew. As a producer calls a young woman who's going over to Charlie's house and says, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay?" So to be fair, it's not right to say everybody knew, because there's a lot of things that people don't know.
Right.
But at least some people knew that, hey, if a young girl goes to Charlie Rose's house, you got to ask her if she's okay. And the most haunting story was near the end of the article, where there's a very detailed explanation of how he lured this one woman in, and then he gets naked, and then he starts touching her, and she realizes, oh my God, I'm in this secluded area and I have nowhere to run.
Right.
And she's crying, and he's still going, and he's still going, right? And it felt like, honestly, like the movie Get Out. Like she's trapped and she can't get out.
Yeah.
And that's really bad.
And it's what I noticed, and it's a common reaction among all the women who are coming forward right now, is for the longest time they blame themselves, right? And they felt like they did something wrong, or they did something that might have invited it. And now they're finally coming forward and realizing, no, I mean, I'm a person who had no position of power, who wanted to get ahead in this extremely competitive field of work, and he saw that and took advantage of that.
And by the way, by getting ahead, what they mean is, oh my God, it's such an amazing opportunity to work with a person they thought was a legendary reporter, an anchor, an interviewer. And so they're like, okay, but people say he's quirky. I can deal with quirky to get this amazing job in journalism. And it turns out quirky is way worse than they imagined.
So I want to read you just a couple of the specific allegations that were detailed in the Washington Post. Obviously, we can't get into every single one of them, or else we dedicate an entire show to it. But you should read the piece, which we will link to in the description box. Kyle Godfrey Ryan, who was one of the accusers, one of Rose's assistants in the mid-2000s, recalled at least a dozen instances where Rose walked nude in front of her while she worked in one of his New York City homes. He also repeatedly called the then 21-year-old late at night or early in the morning to describe his fantasies of her swimming naked in the Bellport pool. That's a reference to where he lived, as he watched from his bedroom. The young women who were hired by the show were sometimes known as Charlie's Angels. Two former employees said Rose frequently gave unsolicited shoulder rubs to several of them, behavior referred to among employees as the crusty paw, a former employee said. That's just, yeah. A woman then in her 30s who was at the Bellport home in 2010 to discuss a job opportunity said Rose appeared before her in an untethered bathrobe, naked underneath. She said he subsequently attempted to put his hands down her pants. So it just goes on. And I want to read you the reaction from Charlie Rose. Let's go to graphic 50. He says that he's greatly embarrassed. I have behaved insensitively at times, and I accept responsibility for that, though I do not believe that all of these allegations are accurate. I always felt that I pursued shared feelings, though I now realize that I was mistaken. So he's not taking full responsibility or full ownership, but his argument is, well, I thought it was consensual.
Yeah, but when you ask women to come and into the shower when you're not in any kind of relationship with them, what made you think that that was in any way consensual? What a weird thing to ask. And sometimes the woman would be driving him, or she'd be in the passenger seat, and he just started grabbing her breasts. You thought that was mutual. Wait, if you guys are dating and you want to have fun, that's a different thing. You're not at all dating. She works under you.
Yeah.
And every time they'd be like, oh my God, what's happening? Charlie Rose is grabbing my breast in the middle of this car. This is insane. A male colleague told one of the women involved, quote, oh, you got the shower trick.
Yeah, so it's somewhat known, but again, like you don't know to what extent, because there were people quoted in the Washington Post piece who did work with Rose, and they said that they never experienced or noticed anything questionable. And so not everyone knows everything.
No, of course, and I want to be super clear about that. I mean, sometimes people get carried away and, oh yeah, Rush Limbaugh today, of course. Oh, all of his female anchors must have known that. How would they know what the hell's going on in his home? Apparently some people knew because they'd warned some of the women, right? But obviously, like, why would Norah O'Donnell know anything about this? Why would Gayle King know anything about this? And remember what predators do. They do it to the powerless, not to the powerful. He's not gonna grope Norah O'Donnell because she would fight back. And she has power to fight back. Instead, he finds young girls, lures them where they can't run, does the shower trick, etc. There's 8 accusers here, and 3 of them are on the record. He's done. If you like this video, you probably like independent media. The best way to support independent media, become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.